The next time we have a bear market, and I don't know when it's coming, but I know we're going to have more bear markets, and I know that the next one is going to be the worst in my lifetime. Adam, 2008 was a problem because of too much debt. Look out the window. Since 2008, the debt has skyrocketed everywhere. Even China has a lot of debt now. So all I'm saying is, and I don't know when it's coming, that the next time it's going to be a nasty, horrible, disastrous bear market. If you look at Britain, 100 years ago, it was the number one country in the world. It's still there. It did go bankrupt. Britain actually went bankrupt in 1976, had to be bailed out by the IMF, down from being number one 50 years before. So the U.S. is going to be there. I don't like saying that. I'm an American citizen, but I have to face facts. The way bear markets start or economic problems start, they usually start small, someplace where people aren't watching. A few weeks later, a few months later, they get bigger and bigger, and then eventually it's on the evening news, and everybody knows there's a problem. This is not quite to that stage yet, but no, it's another sign that eventually we're going to have another recession, which we've always had, and it's probably going to be very bad because there's so much debt in the system now. First of all, it's the longest period in American history without a problem. We have never had such a long period. Adam, it doesn't mean it won't go on 40 years. I have no idea. It never has, but who knows? But I'm starting to see signs. And by the way, I have not sold anything short. I do have a lot of cash, but I've not been shorting. I'm starting to see signs. You see the signs that fewer and fewer shares are going up. They go up every day. Some shares go up every day. A lot of new people are coming into the market, inexperienced people coming in, and they all talk about how much fun it is and how easy it is to make money. So I see some of the signs. The debt is skyrocketing, some of the signs that have happened before. So I'm worried. The US dollar is the world's main currency. Unfortunately, that's beginning to change because more and more people are starting to see that the US debt goes skyrocketing. And in Washington, Adam, if you have the world's reserve currency, it's supposed to be neutral. Anybody can use it for anything. But unfortunately, Washington is now changing those rules. If Washington gets angry at you, they cut you off. They say you cannot use the US dollar. Well, many people, including our friends, are starting to say, wait. This is serious. It could happen to us. It could happen to anybody. And so many people are now, because of Washington, are starting to accelerate to look for something else to compete with the dollar, including me. I'm looking too. I don't see anything on the horizon yet. Should be the Chinese currency, but it's a blocked currency, so it cannot be the Chinese renminbi. And I don't know. I own a lot of US dollars, and I own them because I know that in turmoil, people look for a safe haven, and they will think the US dollar is a safe haven. But as I just said, that's coming to an end. No country stayed on top forever. Rome was great once, Egypt was great once, Britain was great once, but they all lost their position. So it's going to happen to the U.S., whether we like it or not. As I said, we're now the largest debtor nation in the history of the world. That has always led to problems for countries. So the U.S. is going to lose its position. If you study history, it's going to lose it because we built up so much debt. And unfortunately, we're making enemies with our currency and many other things. So I don't particularly like saying it, but certainly the U.S. will not be on top 100 years from now. The last reserve currency was British pound. In 1923, the British pound was it. There was no competitor. There was no number two. 50 years later, 1976 to be exact, Britain went bankrupt. IMF had to fly into Heathrow and pay their bills. It was that serious. That is the currency that went from number one to 50 years later bankrupt. That's what happened, and during that period of time, it was miserable in Britain. You couldn't take money out of the country. You could take only a little bit if you went on a foreign trip. The value of the currency went down almost every week. There were serious exchange controls. There were high debts, high interest rates. Britain was a disaster. Now, Adam, there were always people who did well in Britain. Even, the Beatles didn't leave. The Beatles stayed and made a lot of money. But most people who were in Britain in those 50 years did not have a good time. That is what's always happened in countries and currencies which go through this. Am I looking forward to it? No, but I'm just saying what has happened in the past, and I don't see how we the U.S., can avoid that. Maybe you have an answer. And people will, in those days, moved from the British pound to the US dollar. My problem is I don't know where to move, which currency to move to now, because I don't see another one. We've had 3 central banks in American history. The first 2 disappeared for many reasons. This one's going to disappear too someday because they keep making so many mistakes. But we haven't had, I can only think of a couple of good central bankers in our history, since 1913. And Powell's not one of them. He's not on my list of a good central banker. So I have learned you have to listen to them because they have influence. But I have learned they don't know what they're doing. So don't think that they know what they're doing and what they say is accurate. It's not. Now, the problem is you have to figure out what's accurate then, since they're not right. And we can't just take their word for it. We have to figure out what's going to happen. Markets will go like this. They go up, they correct, they go up, they correct. That's been happening with inflation. Inflation has been correcting, as all markets do. I would suspect, though, that by this time next year, inflation will have reared its ugly head, even to the public, and we will all be wondering, what do we do now? And that interest rates will be going higher again. I hope Mr. Powell can cut rates, and I hope he's smart enough to do it if that's appropriate. But I don't have much confidence. And so much money has been printed in the last few years. Just unbelievable amounts of money, and not just in the U.S., although we led the way, but the Bank of Japan. It's unbelievable. A guy goes to work every day like a good Japanese bureaucrat, goes early, cranks up the printing presses, and prints money as fast as he can. The amount of money being printed in Japan is unbelievable. It's unbelievable in America too. Throughout history, when someone prints a lot of money, it has always led to inflation, and we have certainly printed a huge amount of money. So inflation is back. I'm afraid it's going to get worse because so much money has been printed. We had it in the 70s, but in the 70s, the U.S. was a creditor nation. Now the U.S. is the largest debtor nation in the history of the world. So I would suspect that the inflation is going to be much worse before this is over. Not just the U.S., but especially the U.S. has spent unbelievable amounts of money, borrowed unbelievable amounts, and spent unbelievable. I mentioned Japan before. Japan's got a huge economy, and they're doing it too. Many people are doing it. So we have both monetary, always, we've had a monetary situation and a fiscal situation. And at the moment, Adam, it's a good time to be an old American.
Yeah.
Because young Americans are going to have huge problems someday with all this money that's being borrowed and spent. The numbers are mind-boggling. Once upon a time, it was the British pound. Once upon a time, it was the French franc. Once upon a time, it was a lot of things. And the U.S. is now the largest debtor in the world, and it's getting worse, which fundamentally, of course, makes some people wonder about the dollar. I don't like it, Andy, but as I read history, everybody who has been on top with their currency at one time or another has lost that position. So it's going to happen to the U.S., and if we think it's not, we should read more history.